Tirtha Om Gati Gati Paragati Parasangati Bodhisvaha Om Gati Gati Parasangati Bodhisvaha Om Gati Gati Paragati Parasangati Bodhisvaha. Okay, pertaining to emptiness, I see that some of you have very interesting questions, and these questions are so precious. Any question arises is so precious. Never ever suppress your questions, and it is not necessary that when you ask this question to me and then I should be able to give you an answer. You go to any person should be able to give you an answer. This is not necessary. Even if somebody does not give you the complete answer, or you're not satisfied, it doesn't matter. The flame of your inquiry to learn with this question should not die. The flame is so precious, you must keep it alive and try to meet with the other teachers. You try to read books, and oftentimes as you grow, many of the answers you will get through your own growth. And meanwhile, keep asking questions to others, keep exploring through reading, and particularly attending His Holiness the Dharma's teachings and so forth. You will surely get answers. The point is, these questions are the ones which can potentially take you to the actual understanding of emptiness. These questions are so precious. Okay. Where do we stand now? Huh? 18 finish. Okay. Now stanza 19. Since there is no phenomenon that is not dependent originated, therefore there is no phenomenon that is not empty. So now here, this is about equating emptiness with dependent origination. Equating emptiness with dependent origination. So meanwhile, I should also go into the technicalities. If I'm going to too loose, too lenient, then so when you meet with other teachers or other people, then you try to share your thoughts, and they will speak something politically correct things, and you may not fit in there. You may feel lost. Okay, technically speaking, what we did is emptiness and dependent origination, we equated the two, but don't say that these two are synonymous. Don't say that these two are identical. Emptiness, dependent origin, these two are not identical. Emptiness is a negative phenomenon. Negative meaning the object of a phenomenon of negation. Phenomenon of negation, and the dependent origination is a positive phenomena, right? So don't say that these two are identical. I'm not going to go into what is the phenomenon of negation, what is the phenomenon of positive. The positive phenomenon, I'm not going to go into detail. There's for which we have to study separately. But the point is that these two are not identical. These two can be equated. Equated meaning these two mean the same. But these two are not identical. Don't forget it.
So they are synonymous, but they're not identical.
So we can say that they're synonymous, again, English word. I don't want to go into this. What I will say is that these two are not identical. These two are not identical. We can equate the two. Equate the two meaning these two mean the same, have the same meaning. Emptiness. From this we can derive that whatever is the empty of objective existence, which exists, yet empty of objective existence, should necessarily be dependent originated. Whatever is dependent originated should necessarily be empty of objective existence. This is how we can equate the two things. But it doesn't mean that these two are identicals, right? Okay. And stanza 19, since there is no phenomenon that is not dependent originated, therefore there is no phenomenon that is not empty. There is not empty of objective existence. Is that everything that exists in this universe should necessarily be dependent origination. And we talked about the three kinds of dependent origination, right? Okay. Which page? Page 8, stanza 18.
In the small booklet.
In the small, okay, in the blue?
In the
No.
blue, I don't know.
White.
Okay, you want to go to the yeah.
Blue is 100.
100?
So it's not nice.
Or 34 chapter. It's here also.
I will check.
Yes, page 100,
Stanza 18.
stanza 18. Okay, now, since there is no phenomenon, we come to realize that everything should necessarily be dependent originated or dependent origination. So, what is dependent originated means that object originates or exists by dependence on other factors. If it's dependent, it is not independent. If it is not independent, it is not objectively real. So therefore, it is empty of objective existence. Since there is no phenomenon that is not dependent originated, therefore there is no phenomenon that is not empty. So these two stanzas, stanza 18, 19, His Holiness the Dalai Lama encourages, advises people to memorize these two stanzas and use them on a daily basis in your meditation and emptiness. Stanza 19. Stanza 19 done, stanza 20. Stanza 20. If you turn to stanza 1 and stanza 20, these two are just the opposites. Stanza 1 is the position of the advocates of objective existence, opponents of Aranagarjuna, and stanza 20 is the Aranagarjuna's position to object them, to negate them. So stanza 1 says, if all of this is empty, neither would arising nor ceasing exist, then for you it follows that the Four Noble Truths would not exist. Stanza 20 says, if all of these were non-empty, this is Aranagarjuna's view, saying that if all of these were non-empty, if all of this exists objectively, there would be no arising nor ceasing, then the Four Noble Truths for you would not be existent. Okay. How not existent? Because if things exist objectively, then you cannot account for the arising ceasing. If you cannot account for them, you cannot explain how arising ceasing happen. If the arising ceasing, if you cannot account for the arising ceasing, if you cannot posit arising ceasing, then the Four Noble Truths is grounded on arising ceasing. Say the arising ceasing meaning cause and effect. Say the first truth as the effect, second truth is the cause. Second truth gives rise to the first truth. And the third truth as the effect, not really the effect in true sense, but in a virtual sense, like the effect. And the third truth, the truth of cessation, comes into being only by dependence on the fourth truth. By dependence on the fourth truth, then the third truth comes into being. So this cause effect, in the absence of cause effect, you cannot account for the Four Noble Truths. 20. If all of these were non-empty, there would be no arising and no ceasing. Then the Four Noble Truths for you would be non-existent. 21. If it is not dependently arisen, how could suffering come to be? Okay. If there's no dependent arising, if there's no arising ceasing, then dependent arising is not possible. Dependent origination is not possible. If dependent origination is not possible, then suffering comes into being by dependence on cause and effect. Which cause? Second truth. Suffering comes into being by depends on the second truth. So if there is no dependency possible, then the suffering cannot be possible, because the suffering has to come by depends on the second truth. How could suffering come to be? Impermanent, which suffering is taught to be, does not exist in its self-nature. So suffering, the truth of suffering, again we see that each of these Four Noble Truths, they are further four attributes, four characteristics, four attributes, four divisions of each of the Four Noble Truths. Truth of suffering has four divisions. What are the four divisions of truth of suffering? What are the four divisions of truth of suffering? Okay, four divisions. Suffering, suffering. If you go for suffering, then you get only three.
We never learn about it seriously.
Okay, so basically, okay, 16 aspects of the Four Noble Truths. Four Noble Truths, each of them have four aspects each. Each has four aspects. Truth of suffering has four. Truth of cause of suffering has four. These are known as the 16 aspects of the Four Noble Truths. So the first truth, right? Truth of suffering has four aspects. They are impermanence, suffering, emptiness, and selflessness. Four. These are the four aspects related to the truth of suffering. What are they? Impermanence, suffering, number 2.
Emptiness.
Number 3, emptiness. Number 4, selflessness. So these are the four aspects of the Four Noble Truths. The first truth, truth of suffering. Truth of impermanence. Number 2, suffering. Number 3, emptiness. Number 4, selflessness. These four, right? So, if you want to study these in great detail, you must study Pramana Vartika. Beautiful text. You must study Pramana Vartika. It's a beautiful text, amazingly. You learn this Pramana Vartika text, study this, you will get the Buddhist philosophy, Buddhist concepts, Buddhist path in its most refined and comprehensive form. Then you will know what exactly is the Buddha's teachings. Very refined. Written by Acharya Dharmakirti in 7th century AD. Pramana Vartika. Right? Okay. Pramana Vartika chapter 2. It has 4 chapters. Chapter 2. Precisely chapter 2. Okay. Now, 21. If it is not dependent on reason, if things don't exist by dependency, if things exist independently, objectively, how could suffering come to be? How can explain the arising of suffering? Because suffering should necessarily come into being by dependence on the cause of suffering. And for example, the impermanence, which is the first characteristic of the truth of suffering, which suffering is taught to be. Suffering is taught to be with the 4 aspects. The first of which is impermanence. Number 1, impermanence, which the suffering is taught to be, does not exist in itself. Impermanence means changing. Changing by the power of the causes. But only by the power of the cause, by dependence on causes, then the change can happen. Impermanence can happen. So if things are independent, no dependency is there, change cannot happen. Then impermanence cannot be possible. If the impermanence cannot be possible, then the 4 aspects of the truth of suffering cannot be possible. Does not exist in its self-nature. Self-nature means objective existence, inherent existence, intrinsic existence. They all mean the same. Objective existence, inherent existence, intrinsic existence, they all mean the same. 22. When something does exist from its own nature, existing from own nature, existing from the existing objectively, existing by self-nature, existing inherently, existing intrinsically, they all mean the same. Okay, 22. When something does exist, if something does exist from its own nature or objectively, how could it ever arise? Now, for example, say the flower. If the flower, if it exists objectively, how can it arise? Arise means earlier it was non-existent and then it comes into being. This is known as arising. When it was non-existent earlier, there must be some other factor which will make it to come into being. There must be some other factor. That factor is known as the cause. So if it is not dependent on the cause, then the arising is not possible. If the arising is not possible, it follows that if one denies emptiness, there can be no origin of suffering. So the suffering, if it exists objectively, if it exists independently, then it cannot arise. It cannot be something which was non-existent at one time, and then by depends on other factors, which is that other factor cause, original suffering, but that factor, then the suffering comes into being. That is not possible. If that is not possible, then if suffering exists, it exists all the time. If it is non-existent, it should be non-existent all the time, right? If that happens, then arising is not apply. Without the arising, then the cause makes no sense. Second truth makes no sense. What's the second truth? Truth of the cause of suffering, right? Okay. There can be no original suffering. Original suffering meaning the second truth, truth of the cause of suffering. Origin and cause mean the same. 23. If suffering exists as self-nature, again, if suffering exists as the objectively, its cessation could not exist. Okay, this is very important. Keep this in mind. If you notice that many of the following arguments, the debates can be understood very easily. Say, if something exists, okay, first just see if you can follow what I'm saying. If something exists objectively, it should exist independently. You agree with me or not?
Yes.
If something exists objectively, it should exist independently. If it exists independently, it should not depend on any other factors. Do you agree with me? If it does not depend on any other factors, it should not depend on the causes as well. If it does not exist on causes, right? Then without the causes for a composite phenomena, without the causes, if something exists, it should exist eternally. Right? No cause, no factor can stop it from existence. If it is non-existent, no factor can bring it to existence. It should be not. If it is non-existent, it should remain non-existent at all times.
So it's completely frozen world.
Frozen world. This is the point. If things exist objectively, this is the point. We are not saying that the world is frozen. What we are saying is that if things exist objectively, then the world should become a frozen world, right? Everything should become static, stagnant.
So the concept of time is very much connected to change and dependent arising.
Very good. Concept of time is, you said what? Change and dependent origination. Okay, I say change. Change. The phenomenon of change is related to dependent origination or not? Yes. Which dependent origination? There are three levels of dependent origination. Cause and effect, the first one, right? So the time is very good. Time is glued with, in other words, time is only associated with the change. And change is associated only with the first level of dependent origination, which is dependent origination of the results depends on causes. You getting it? Okay. So time is synonymous with the change, time and change, time and impermanent phenomena. They are synonymous. Synonymous meaning that time is applicable only to the impermanent phenomena and only to the change. Yes.
Why did you say that objective existence means independent existence?
Objective existence means?
You said that objective existence means independent existence?
Yes.
Why is that so?
Okay. The question is, objective existence and independent existence mean the same, right? How is it that these two are the same?
Yeah.
Okay, anyone who can help me. How is objective existence and independent existence, how are these two the same?
Okay, I'll try. Because if something exists objectively, so it exists independently of, like the example of the table was that for me. If it was not dependent on someone who will make a table and
No, the question is, so
no.
don't take for granted that objective existence and independent existence mean the same. Only then you can speak about later things. His question is, at the root, how can we equate these two things, objective existence and independent existence? How can we equate these two things? Devarala? Yes?
If it exists objectively, it
cannot rely on something, on a cause to arise.
How? If it exists objectively, then it should not be dependent on the causes for its arisal. How?
Because something is there in the object.
Yes, something is an object. Then what's the problem?
It's independent. It's there. It's not dependent on the mind or anything.
Yes, it's not dependent on
No
the
matter
mind.
what. It's from there.
Is there yes?
From
So what's the
inside.
problem? So how should it be independently real? Anyone? Yes.
I think I can try and explain it by saying that if something exists objectively, it means it exists by its own power, on its own. It doesn't need to be, it can't be affected by anything other
So
than itself.
your name?
Toma.
Tomer. Tomer will not be too happy with this, right? He will say that things can exist objectively, still they can depend on others. What's the problem? This is Tomer's argument, right?
Yeah, that was
Yeah. Anyone else?
Maybe it means that it was all the time. It was in the, it wasn't erased. It was all the time. It does no beginning. Does no. It was.
Okay, so Tomer may say that this is not the reality. Things can be objectively real. They can still be dependent, right? They can still be dependent. So when the causes or factors are there, they will come into being. When the causes and factors, the causes and conditions, they disappear, they also disappear. Still they can be objectively real. What's the problem? This is Tomer's argument, right?
But Tomer cannot say. What is the definition of objective? He can say. The definition of objective existence, it means that it's existing from its own side, not depending on anything else.
No. This is how Tomer will define objective existence. Something exists on its own, independent of the mind, but still it can depend on the cause and conditions. What's wrong with it? This is Tomer's argument, right? Yes, Tomer?
Yeah.
Okay, so Irid.
If it only had depended on causes and conditions, we would all have been able to see the same thing in the same way at the same time. But the fact that we all see it differently, it means that it also depends on our view of the thing. For example, if the flower only had depended on its growth and external factors, nothing mine, you and I would have to see it the same way and loved it the same way, and so is everybody else.
But
But the fact that you may not like it and I may like it means that it also depends on our perception of the flower.
But that's how you feel. That doesn't mean that the object is really what you see or I see. Maybe we don't see the true nature of the object. You feel.
Okay, so I think the Tomer, the best thing would be, rather than making it too complicated, you can say that, okay, this flower, whether you like it or not, this is not about the flower, it's about the characteristic of the flower. Characteristics of the flower can depend on one, that's fine, but the object, right? You see it's a flower, I don't like it. I see it's a flower, you still like it, you still see it's a flower. So we see the same object as a flower, right? Characteristics, I like it, you don't like it, you like it, I don't like it, that's fine. That is more how your mind makes it, but I'm talking about the object. Object exists objectively. Right? It's not created by your mind. So still it depends on other factors. It depends on, not on your mind, it depends on the causes, the conditions, the seed, the water, and so forth. So the object exists objectively, yet can be dependent. So how can you say that objective existence and independent existence are equated?
I can go one step forward. Well, only one, I cannot maybe I can help people, but I cannot figure it out. But when we say that something, the flower objects exist objectively, we say it's ultimate analysis, it exists. For the people who assume objective existence, it's the ultimate analysis.
So if you say the flower exists objectively, then you are saying that the flower exists ultimately. So what's the problem?
That's what I can do, and I cannot go forward. Someone else can do it.
Okay, now Aries.
If you say that the flower exists objectively,
Yes.
then independent of the mind,
Yes.
if we take cause and effect, for example, at best, they must exist simultaneously.
How?
Because if they are independent of the mind that designate cause and effect, in order to have a cause, I have to ask the other person, cause of what? And in order to posit an effect, cause and effect must hypothetically exist simultaneously.
But the cause and effect is fine, but the flower exists objectively. So what's wrong with it?
Not every creature we think is a flower.
Say it again.
Not every creature.
Oh, not every creature will see this as a flower. Who's that creature who is not seeing this as a flower? Huh? An ant. Ant will not see his flower because he is not seeing the whole thing. He's just seeing a tiny bit. So this is his unfortunate part. If he's lucky as we are to see everything whole, he will also see as a flower. A cat. We never know what the cat sees. Right? We cannot speak on behalf of the cats.
But the bacteria.
Okay. Anyone? Okay, we have now the Vada there, then Yarun there. Okay, first Vada.
Maybe it's permanent.
Which one?
The object,
The flower.
it's only the flower?
Yes, yes, sir, the flower.
Only the flower.
Yes, Yarun.
Maybe I say, okay, it's objective. So if analyze it, if you take the object and you try to show me its objectivity, if you analyze it conventionally or ultimately and you find the object, then I agree with you.
Yeah, so he'll pick up the flower and say, this is the object.
Yeah.
Right?
It can be built of parts. Here, when I do the ultimate analysis, I see a lot of atoms. So it's a flower, okay? An independent flower that is built of a lot of different parts. What's the problem with that?
Okay, Diorama.
Wasn't your explanation about if it's objectively, you asked us, either they cause an effect need or they don't. And
So
you
this
proved
is-
us that they cannot be affected.
This is
because
when you
of-
extend from the flower to the cause and effect. The Tomer is more directly with the flower. He's not interested in anything else. No cause and effect. Just the flower. How do you see that a flower exists, if it exists objectively, how should it be equated with the flower existing independently? Yes.
If you make an analysis for all the characteristics the color, the shape, everything that then you say this is flower, then you see that everything is in your mind, because the color is when you get the waves of the photons that come to your eyes. There is no pink outside, it's only after it go the process of the eyes and the brain. The same, the shape, the same, the smell, nothing outside there, everything go the process and then in the brain
This is
and
also
then the
outside.
mind.
This is not the mind, it's the brain.
Brain and
So
after the
how do you
brain
know
and
it's the
after
mind?
it the mind, because if you measure the brain, you can only see waves, but the pink or image or dream, this is mind. You cannot measure it.
I think maybe Tomer may put it like this. Instead of going that way, say the color is fine. It's purely the light, photon, right? But it's made of electrons, protons. That's 400% sure. Electrons, protons, neutrons, that combination is not what your mind makes. This object real, that is what is the flower, and that is object real, yet it is dependent on other factors. So this is object real, still can be dependent. So how can you equate objective existence and dependent existence? The objective existence and independent existence. So the color is fine. Color, you can say that is not the color of the object, it's coming from the source of the light and hitting your cornea and how the mind interprets it, that's fine. So, but then it is made of electrons, protons, neutrons.
Yes, but
This is not what your mind makes.
Unless you perceive the electrons, protons, that you can continue divide it, of course. Unless the mind perceive it, there is no one shape, form, and no meaning.
It is
for
not
this.
necessary that, the Tomer may say it is not necessary to perceive it. Even without perceiving, even if you all leave this house, still the flower will exist. That's for sure. So therefore, there's something there object real. Okay, very complicated. Is there anyone who's going to give the last stand? Say that.
It doesn't exist independently.
Huh?
It doesn't exist independently.
Doesn't exist independently. How do you say? No. So he agrees with. He says that it does not exist independently. He says this is dependent existence, yet it is objectively real. This is what he's saying. So our equating the two things, this he cannot agree. You want to give the last answer?
I want